Now my hate for Illumination is well documented, and I did a video for the Super Mario Bros. Movie last year talking about how it's the first good Illumination movie, and I stand by that, but Migration might very well be the second good Illumination movie, like surprisingly so. I had negative expectations for this movie and I saw it solely to fill out my 2024 ranking. I thought the trailer looked incredibly dull and it just seemed uninspired and was co-written by Mike White, who doesn't exactly have the best track record when it comes to animated movies, so it was safe to assume this was going to be another Illumination dud. But I was wrong. Now this movie isn't incredible, let's just get that out of the way now. The movie is just good. It isn't going to blow you away, but I think it does a lot of things right that even Disney and Pixar haven't been doing for a long time, so let's just start at the beginning. This film opens up with this gorgeous 2D animation that I wish the film was animated like for the entire movie, but it's a cute way to introduce us to the world. It's very reminiscent of the Kung Fu Panda openings, and I appreciate little details like this. They didn't have to do this, but they did. And during this intro we hear our protagonist for the very first time, Mac. And he's voiced by Kumail Nanjiani, who is a very charismatic actor, but voice acting is a whole other game. Being able to deliver a convincing performance with just your voice is not a task just any actor can do, and through the strings of celebrity castings and animated movies forcing out real voice actors in the process, Kumail is a really good fit for this role. Sometimes I do think he exaggerates a little too much and he starts to sound a little Pauly Shore in the Pinocchio movie.
For our big, super fun family migration!
What?
Ha! Let's go, Tybalt! Great adventures await!
But Kumail isn't our only actor. We have Elizabeth Banks, who is always a safe bet for a solid, even if not standout performance. We have Casper Jennings, whose only credits involve the Sing movies sadly, but he does well enough here, and also Trezi Ghazal, who has no previous credits to her name, but she is enchantingly cute in this film. And that's just the main cast. We have side characters who are killing it, which is damn near a staple of animation at this point. You have to get the side characters right because they fill up a lot of time in these family movies, especially in a road trip movie, which this is. Don't get it twisted, just because they're flying or whatever, this is definitely a road trip movie, and quirky side characters are a cliche I'm comfortable with in that genre. And in this movie we have Danny DeVito as Uncle Dan, who is doing Danny DeVito, but who doesn't enjoy that? We also have Carol Kane as Erin the Heron, who is haunting and charming at the same time. I loved her performance. And we also have Keegan-Michael Key as Delroy the Macaw, who is very easily my favourite character in the movie. It's no surprise saying that Key absolutely glows on the mic and gives one of the most entertaining and enjoyable performances in a recent animated movie because he's a brilliant performer. Sadly though, of course, we have the obligatory Awkwafina character because this is a modern animated movie, but luckily for us, her role is pretty limited. And the general aesthetic of the movie isn't awful either. I think one of the worst things about Illumination movies historically is their character designs. They are so ugly and specific to the studio, especially the humans. But in this film there are basically no humans, and though I generally find semi-realistic 3D animation in kids movies boring at best and detrimental at worst, I don't mind it too much here. I think animation is an opportunity to be stylistic, be illogical and fun, visually beautiful and different without the limitations of the real world, and doing this style I think is very counterproductive. But I think Migration does enough to stylize certain sequences so it's not as egregious as it usually is. It can be very bright and beautiful without being overstimulating like something such as Trolls. But beyond the cast and crew, the animation and all of those things, let's talk about the story now. So it's a simple enough story. It's one of an overprotective father learning to let go as he and his duck family engage in their first migration. It's a unique avenue to take this kind of story. This setting has not really been used before, which I think is nice for a studio that is generally trying their hardest to play it completely safe. Not saying this is overly risky or anything, but this feels a lot more classic Pixar than Illumination in concept. Now in the intro, they have the dad character basically tell this horror story about these little ducks migrating that get viciously attacked by a heron, and then of course, like Chekhov's gun, they meet a real heron after beginning their migration. And I like the way they present not only the character but the setting. The tone of the movie completely shifts into this PG horror vibe. The heron design is sadistically terrifying, and the situation in general really is dark to be 15 minutes into this duck family movie. The way the heron moves so erratically is great character design, and the lighting of this scene is strangely gorgeous. Now of course I'm rating this all on a scale for a kids movie, okay? This isn't gonna scare any adults, well I at least hope not, so take this with the obvious grain of salt, but I'm just saying for a kids movie, this is doing everything right. They also subvert your expectations because they set up this character to be evil, so you know in your head that they're not actually going to be, but then it turns out they are, which is such a bizarre turn. And then in another turn, it turns out they're actually super sweet. It's a roller coaster of emotions, and the characters go through a lot very quickly. And this isn't just some pointless action scene, it moves forward the plot as well as servicing the character arcs. This is immediately showing the audience and the other characters that Mac, the father, was wrong, but also maybe showing Mac himself too. And we get rewarded for this bit of movement with this flight scene where the family go above the clouds, and the directing has so much energy, and for just a simple flight scene there's a lot of dynamic filmmaking happening. Then of course they bring that energy back up from feel good to excitement as the Mallards enter New York City. And I think this is a good time as any to say that this movie is funny, like not just slapstick fart humor funny, but has good comedic timing and decently written jokes. I never fell out of my seat, but I had a very pleasant time just existing in this script. A lot of smiles were on my face, and the word I would use to best describe this time is cute. We meet some pigeons, Aquafina is here, a cute few character moments happen, and then we move on to another beautiful flight scene which is lit up by the neon and the screens that litter New York City skylines. We do all this to meet our new side character, Delroy, voiced by the aforementioned Keegan-Michael Key, and this is where I stress this film's addiction to brevity. It's so concise and only ever spends time on what is needed at the time. When there's an action sequence, it takes a moment afterwards to breathe, give levity before moving forward at a nice and steady pace, whilst using every single scene to service an arc or an emotion. It's simple technique, but you'd be shocked at how many animated films ruin their pacing for unnecessary scenes just to fill out a runtime. Like, we meet Delroy, we get introduced to his conflict, we discover how he can help our characters along their journey contingent his conflict gets resolved. They decide to resolve his conflict in a way which will also develop their character with a result that moves our story forward. It's so efficient, and other animated movies should take notes because this is a way to not be revolutionary but also be refreshing and fun, comfortable, which is all these movies need to be. During this whole sequence, we meet the antagonist of the rest of the movie, which is the chef, who I actually kind of love. First of all, his aesthetic is baller, and I just love how goofy he is. He has this like prison on his pimped out helicopter. He's also silent, he doesn't say a single word, which I thought was quite a fun choice. They easily could have had him cracking jokes or something, but they have him just silently getting his life ruined over and over. And every time he shows up, the music is popping off, and that kind of goes for the whole movie really. The score for this film is really great. There's no mind-numbing licensed music which is usually rife in Illumination films. And I don't know, the film has a few more conflicts, blah blah blah. We have the resolution you see coming from the very opening scene, and I don't think much of this film is going to take you by surprise, except for the fact you may actually like it more than you expect to. I like a lot of what's going on here. I love that the sibling dynamic isn't one of rivalry or conflict. They're just good to each other and care, which is honestly harder to do than just have them at odds with each other the whole movie. Because apparently movies think every single sibling dynamic is hostile. And the film can be beautiful. The music is genuinely cinematic. The character arcs are handled well, even if simple. And it's just a cute and inoffensive movie that I think works very well for the family. I don't think it'll make parents parents want to off themselves like Sing or Trolls does. And now obviously it has its problems. It has a weird end dance scene because of course it does. It is predictable. It's nothing that screams future classic. I think though the brevity is something to be championed, I think we switch from location to location a bit too much. We never go through an extended period of conflict or tension. We get a struggle or confrontation and it's over almost immediately. They never struggle too hard to get out of a bind. Think Toy Story with Sid's house. There's plenty of different sequences that keep the energy up and the pacing moving at a steady pace, and they make the most out of that scenery whilst having two main sources of conflict which basically combine into one anyway, which is Sid and Scud. They let the film marinate for a moment, which I think this film could have used, a moment to have a lot of character progression with not as much action. Because they try this every now and then, but they act like Mac is this awful father and husband, but like he kind of isn't. He seems a bit overprotective, but in general he's quite free. He just cares a bit much. He changes his mind about migrating almost immediately. It took one single conversation with Uncle Dan. I feel we didn't see enough of his anti-exploring or restrictive personality. We just kind of get told that's how he is and then we see him get better. But it would have helped to fully experience both sides more than just like this one scene. Also, they completely ripped off Ratatouille with this one scene. I just wanted to quickly point that out. But in general, I think it's quite strange that the last few efforts from Disney and Pixar have been noticeably rough with Wish, Elemental, Strange World and Lightyear, whilst DreamWorks, Sony Animation and now apparently Illumination are finding their feet finally. I mean, damn, even Netflix are putting out more reliable children's animation lately. And you know, I don't cover animation a lot on this channel because, you know, I try to cover, you know, grown-up movies and whatever, but sometimes I just want to give back something to people that have families, and I say this with peace and love. So if you want to take your children out to see a movie and can't decide what to see this. It'll be a fun time at best and an inoffensive one at worst. But that's just me. Have you seen Migration? If so, let me know what you think of it. Let me know what you think of this video and whether it's a comeback movie from a historically bad animation studio or not. As always, keep watching movies.